My brother's perfect girlfriend told our parents I sabotaged his proposal. So I showed them the hidden boyfriend, the stolen ring money, and the escape plan. My mother slapped me across the face the moment I walked through the front door. No warning, no explanation, just the crack of her palm against my cheek and the ringing silence that followed. I stood there in the entryway of the house I grew up in, still holding the birthday present I'd brought for my nephew, trying to understand what had just happened. My father was standing behind her with his arms crossed and his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles jumping under his skin. My brother Connor was on the couch with his head in his hands, and next to him sat Megan, his girlfriend of 3 years, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue and looking at me like I was something she'd scraped off the bottom of her shoe. Nobody said anything for what felt like an eternity. Then my mother spoke, and her voice was shaking with a rage I'd never heard before in my entire 26 years of life. How could you do this to your own brother? How could you be so cruel? I had no idea what she was talking about. I genuinely had no clue what crime I'd apparently committed. I'd driven 3 hours to be here for my nephew's 5th birthday party, and now I was standing in the foyer being treated like a criminal while Megan watched with tears streaming down her perfect face. What are you talking about? My voice came out steadier than I expected, considering my cheek was still burning and my heart was pounding against my ribs. Don't play innocent, my father said. Megan told us everything. She told us what you did. I looked at Megan sitting there on the couch, and for just a second, I saw something flash behind her tears. Something cold and calculating that disappeared so fast, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. She turned to look at Connor and put her hand on his arm, and he flinched away from her touch like he couldn't bear to be comforted. That's when I noticed the ring box sitting on the coffee table. Open. Empty. And suddenly, I understood that whatever Megan had told them, it was something to do with the proposal Connor had been planning for months. The proposal he'd asked me to help him with because I was his older brother, and I was supposed to know about these things. He'd shown me the ring 3 weeks ago, a 2-carat diamond that cost him almost $12,000 and 6 months of saving. He'd been so nervous and so excited, asking me if I thought she'd like it, if I thought she'd say yes, if I thought he was making the right choice. I told him she'd love it. I told him she'd say yes. I told him he was making the right choice because that's what brothers do. We lie to protect each other from the truths we're too scared to speak out loud. And the truth I'd been too scared to speak was that something about Megan had always felt wrong to me. Not wrong in an obvious way, not wrong in a way I could point to or prove, just wrong in the way your gut tells you to check the locks twice before you go to bed. She was too perfect, too polished, too exactly what Connor had always said he wanted in a woman. Connor finally looked up at me, and his eyes were red and swollen like he'd been crying for hours. 3 years, he said. 3 years I've been with her. 3 years I've been planning a future with her, and you couldn't stand to see me happy, could you? You never could. Connor, I don't know what she told you, but whatever it is, it's not true. She showed me the texts, Nathan. He stood up, and his voice cracked on my name. She showed me the texts you sent her trying to convince her to leave me. She showed me the screenshots where you called me a loser and said she could do better. She showed me everything, and I still can't believe my own brother would do something like this. I felt the blood drain from my face. Texts? What texts? I never sent her any texts. I barely even have her number. Stop lying. My mother stepped forward like she wanted to slap me again. We saw them with our own eyes. Your name, your number, messages going back months. You've been trying to sabotage this relationship since the beginning. I shook my head, trying to process what was happening. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of nightmare I was going to wake up from any second. I never sent those texts. I don't know what she showed you, but it wasn't from me. Megan made a small sound, something between a sob and a hiccup. I didn't want to believe it either, she said softly. When I first started getting the messages, I thought it had to be a mistake. I thought maybe someone had stolen Nathan's phone or was pretending to be him. But then they got more specific. He knew things about Connor, private things, things only family would know. He kept telling me I deserved better, that Connor would never amount to anything, that I should leave before I wasted my life. I stared at her, watching the performance unfold with a growing sense of horror. She was good. She was really, really good. The tears, the trembling voice, the way she kept looking at Connor like she was trying to protect him from me. If I didn't know with absolute certainty that I'd never sent those texts, I might have believed her too. Let me see them, I said. Let me see these texts. Megan's eyes flickered, just for a second, before she reached for her phone. She handed it to my mother, who scrolled through something on the screen and then held it up for me to see. There it was. My name at the top of a text thread. Messages going back almost 8 months. Detailed, cruel, manipulative messages telling Megan she was wasting her time with my brother. Calling Connor names I would never use. Telling her she should leave him before the proposal because once she said yes, she'd be trapped forever. The number wasn't mine. It was close, off by 2 digits, but it wasn't mine. And the messages themselves were written in a way I would never write. Too formal in some places, too casual in others. Little things that wouldn't stand out to someone who didn't know me well, But that screamed wrong to anyone who did. That's not my number, I said quietly. Look at it. It's not my number. My mother squinted at the screen. It's close enough. You probably used a fake number to cover your tracks. I pulled out my phone and held it up next to hers. Look, my number ends in 2847. That number ends in 2347. It's not me. Someone is pretending to be me. Megan shook her head sadly. I thought about that too, she said. But the things in those messages, the private details about Connor, about your family, there's no way a stranger would know those things. Only someone close to him would know that he still sleeps with the light on sometimes, or that he failed his driver's test 3 times, or that he cried when your grandmother died. Only family would know. My stomach dropped. Those were real things, private things, things I'd told someone in confidence, things I'd mentioned casually over dinner or during late-night conversations, things I'd shared with people I trusted, people like Megan. She'd been to family dinners, she'd been to holiday gatherings, she'd sat in our living room and listened to stories and filed away every piece of information like ammunition for a war nobody knew she was fighting. I looked at Connor and saw that he'd stopped crying. Now he just looked tired and broken and completely convinced that his own brother had tried to destroy his happiness. Connor, I said slowly, think about this. Why would I do this? What would I gain from breaking you two up? I don't know, Nathan. He ran his hands through his hair. Maybe you're jealous. Maybe you can't stand that I found someone and you're still single. Maybe you've always resented me for being the favorite and this is your way of getting back at me. Is that really what you think? I can't think of any other explanation. The texts are real. The number is close to yours. The details are accurate. What else am I supposed to believe? You could believe your brother. You could believe the person who's known you your entire life, instead of the woman you've known for 3 years. Connor looked at Megan, and something passed between them that I couldn't read. She reached for his hand, and this time, he let her take it. I think you should leave, Nathan, my mother said. You've done enough damage for one day. This is insane. I came here for Oliver's birthday party. I came here because you invited me. And now you're throwing me out because of some fake texts that anyone could have sent? My father stepped forward. The texts might be questionable, but there's more. I felt my heart stutter. More? What else? Megan looked at the floor like she was ashamed to speak. Connor squeezed her hand encouragingly, and she took a deep breath. The ring, she whispered. The money for the ring. What about it? I asked, even though I already knew whatever she was about to say was going to be worse than the texts. Connor started saving for that ring over a year ago, my father said. He had almost $15,000 in a separate account, money he'd been putting aside from every paycheck. 2 weeks ago, $9,000 disappeared from that account. Megan found a transfer confirmation in Connor's email. The money was sent to an account in your name. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. That's impossible. I didn't take any money. I would never steal from my own brother. The confirmation had your name and your account number, my mother said. Connor showed it to us. He didn't want to believe it either, but the evidence is right there. Check my accounts, I said desperately. Call my bank. You'll see, I never received any transfer from Connor. I have maybe $3,000 in my savings account. If $9,000 showed up, I would have noticed. You could have moved it somewhere else, Connor said quietly. You could have transferred it to another account or taken it out as cash. There's no way to prove you didn't. So I'm guilty until proven innocent? Is that how this family works now? Someone makes accusations and I'm automatically the villain? The texts, the money, and now this. Megan's voice was stronger now, more confident. I found something else yesterday. Something I didn't want to tell Connor because I thought maybe I was wrong. But now I know I'm not. She reached into her purse and pulled out a piece of paper, folded in half. She handed it to my father, who unfolded it and read whatever was written there. His face went pale. What is it? My mother asked. He handed her the paper without a word. She read it and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure disgust. What does it say? I demanded. Show me what it says. It's a letter, my mother said slowly. A letter you apparently wrote to Megan 3 months ago. It says that if she doesn't break up with Connor by the end of the year, you'll tell everyone about her past. About something she did before she met Connor. Something she's ashamed of and has been trying to leave behind. I never wrote that. Let me see it. My father shook his head. I think we've seen enough. You need to leave, Nathan. This isn't a request. I don't care if it's a request. I'm not leaving until you listen to me. That letter is a forgery. Those texts are fake. I didn't take Connor's money. Someone is setting me up and you're all falling for it. Who would set you up? Connor asked. Who would go through all this trouble to frame you? Isn't it obvious? I pointed at Megan. She would. She's the one who benefits from all of this. She's the one who gets to play the victim while I get thrown out of my own family. Megan burst into fresh tears. I knew you'd blame me, she sobbed. I knew you'd try to turn this around on me. That's why I didn't want to say anything. I didn't want to cause more problems. But I couldn't let Connor marry someone while his own brother was plotting against him. I couldn't let him propose without knowing the truth. My mother wrapped her arm around Megan's shoulders. It's okay, sweetheart. You did the right thing. Connor knows you were just trying to protect him. I stood there watching my family comfort the woman who was systematically destroying my relationship with them. I wanted to scream. I wanted to grab them all and shake them until they saw what I was seeing. But I knew it wouldn't help. They'd already made up their minds. The evidence was too compelling, the performance too convincing. Anything I said now would just make me look more guilty. Fine, I said. I'll leave. But this isn't over. I'm going to prove that she's lying, and when I do, you're all going to owe me the biggest apology of your lives. Connor stood up and walked toward me. For a moment I thought maybe he was having second thoughts. Maybe some part of him still trusted his brother over his girlfriend. Then he got close enough that only I could hear him, and he said something that shattered whatever hope I had left. I never want to see you again. He stepped back and looked at me with eyes that held nothing but contempt. Don't come to the wedding. Don't come to holidays. Don't contact me or Megan ever again. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have a brother anymore. I wanted to argue. I wanted to fight, but I could see it was pointless. So I turned around and walked out the front door, leaving behind my family, my nephew's birthday present, and any illusion I'd had that blood was thicker than whatever poison Megan had been dripping in their ears for the past 3 years. I got in my car and sat there for a long time, staring at the house I grew up in while my hands shook against the steering wheel. I didn't know how she'd done it. I didn't know why she'd done it, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Megan had just declared war, and I was going to make sure she lost. The drive back to my apartment took 4 hours because I had to pull over twice when my vision got too blurry from the tears I refused to acknowledge. By the time I got home, it was past midnight, and I felt like I'd aged 10 years in a single day. I sat on my couch in the dark and tried to piece together what had happened. The texts were fake, obviously. Someone had created a number similar to mine and sent those messages to Megan, or Megan had created them herself and pretended to receive them. The money transfer was trickier. If there was really a confirmation email with my name and account number on it, that meant someone had either hacked into Connor's account or created a fake document convincing enough to fool my family. The letter was probably the same kind of forgery, a document designed to make me look like a manipulative monster who'd been targeting Megan for months. The question was why? What did Megan gain from destroying my relationship with Connor? From making me look like the villain in a story I hadn't even known was being written? If she wanted to marry my brother, she was already on track to do that. He'd bought the ring. He was planning the proposal. She didn't need to eliminate me from the picture because I wasn't standing in her way. Unless she was planning something that required me to be gone. Something that wouldn't work if I was still around to notice, to question, to investigate. I pulled out my phone and started searching. Megan Collins, my brother's perfect girlfriend. The woman everyone in my family adored. The woman who'd appeared in Connor's life 3 years ago and slowly become the center of his entire world. I didn't find much at first. Her social media was pristine, carefully curated photos of her and Connor at restaurants and beaches and family gatherings. Pictures of her volunteering at animal shelters and participating in charity runs and being exactly the kind of person you'd want your son to marry. But I kept digging, going back further and further until I found something interesting. Her Facebook account had been created exactly 3 years and 2 months ago, right before she met Connor. There was nothing before that. No old photos, no throwback posts, no tagged pictures from college or high school. It was like she'd materialized out of thin air at 24 years old with no history and no past. That wasn't normal. Everyone has a digital footprint. Old MySpace accounts they forgot to delete, embarrassing photos from high school parties, tagged posts from college friends. Megan had none of that. Either she'd scrubbed her entire online presence before meeting my brother, or Megan Collins wasn't her real name. I spent the next 3 days down a rabbit hole of reverse image searches and public records databases. I barely slept. I barely ate. I just kept searching, following threads that led to dead ends, and then starting over with new search terms and different approaches. On the 4th day, I found it. A news article from 6 years ago in a small town in Oregon. A woman named Vanessa Graham had been arrested for fraud after bilking 3 elderly men out of nearly $200,000 through a romance scam. She'd seduced them, gained their trust, and then systematically drained their bank accounts before disappearing. The charges were eventually dropped due to insufficient evidence, and Vanessa Graham vanished. I stared at the mugshot attached to the article. The hair was different, darker and shorter. The makeup was less polished, but the eyes were the same, the shape of the jaw, the curve of the lips, the slight asymmetry of the eyebrows. It was Megan. I was sure of it. I printed out everything I'd found and drove straight to a private investigator's office the next morning. His name was Derek Ashford, and he'd been recommended by a lawyer friend who said he was expensive but thorough. His office was small and cluttered, with filing cabinets lining the walls and a desk buried under stacks of paper. He was in his late 50s with gray hair and the kind of tired eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything anymore. He listened to my story without interrupting, flipping through the printouts I'd brought and occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. When I finished, he set down his pen and looked at me with an expression I couldn't read. "You understand that if you're wrong about this, you're going to look even worse to your family," he said. "I'm not wrong." I leaned forward in my chair. That woman is Vanessa Graham. She changed her name, she created a fake identity, and she's been running a long con on my brother for 3 years. Why? What's the endgame? I don't know yet. But my brother had almost $15,000 saved for that ring. 9,000 of it is already gone. If she can steal that much without getting caught, imagine what she could do once she's married to him. Once she has access to joint accounts, once she's named as a beneficiary on his insurance policies, once she has legal claim to half of everything he owns. Derek nodded slowly. I've seen cases like this before, he said. Romance fraud is more common than people think. Most victims never report it because they're too embarrassed to admit they were fooled. Some of them never even realize they've been scammed. They just think they had bad luck in love. I need proof, I said. I need something concrete that I can show my family, something they can't dismiss or explain away. That's going to take time and money. Time I have. And money isn't an issue if it means saving my brother from this woman. Derek agreed to take the case. His retainer was $5,000, which was about half of my savings, but I didn't care. If Megan was who I thought she was, Connor was in danger. Real danger. Not just financial ruin, but potentially something worse. I'd read about romance scammers who didn't stop at draining bank accounts. Some of them took out life insurance policies on their victims. Some of them made sure their victims had convenient accidents after the paperwork was in order. I couldn't let that happen to my brother. Even if he hated me right now, even if he'd told me he never wanted to see me again, I couldn't just stand by and watch him walk into a trap. The next few weeks were some of the hardest of my life. I went to work and pretended everything was fine while my mind raced with theories and fears. I checked my phone constantly, hoping for updates from Derek, dreading what he might find. I didn't call Connor. I didn't reach out to my parents. I knew they wouldn't listen. Not yet. I needed evidence first. Proof that couldn't be denied or dismissed. Derek called me 3 weeks after I hired him. His voice was careful, measured, the way people sound when they're about to deliver news that's going to change everything. You need to come to my office, he said. I found something. I was there in 20 minutes. Derek was sitting at his desk with a thick folder in front of him and an expression that told me my worst fears were about to be confirmed. Megan Collins doesn't exist, he said without preamble. The social security number she uses was stolen from a woman who died in a car accident 8 years ago. The birth certificate she provided for her driver's license is a forgery. Her entire identity is fabricated. I felt sick. I knew, I said. I knew she was lying about who she was. It gets worse. He opened the folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. I've been following her for the past 2 weeks. Your brother works long hours, right? 9 to 6 most days, sometimes later. Yeah. He's a software engineer. Lots of overtime, especially lately. Derek nodded. Megan knows his schedule. She knows exactly when he leaves and when he comes home. And while he's at work, she's been meeting with someone. He slid the first photograph across the desk. It showed Megan sitting at a coffee shop with a man I didn't recognize. They were leaning close together, their heads almost touching, clearly engaged in an intimate conversation. Who is he? I asked. His name is Kyle Brennan, 31 years old, history of minor fraud charges, currently working as a quote-unquote financial consultant. He slid another photo across. This one showed Megan and Kyle walking into a hotel together, and another. Kyle's arm around Megan's waist as they waited for an elevator, and another. The two of them sitting in a parked car, clearly kissing. She's cheating on Connor, I said. But even as the words left my mouth, I knew it was more than that. Cheating was bad, but it was ordinary. This was something else. I don't think cheating is the right word, Derek said. Based on what I've observed, I believe Kyle Brennan is her partner. Not a romantic partner. A business partner. They're running this scam together. I felt the pieces clicking into place. The fake texts, the stolen money, the letter. They weren't random attacks designed to hurt me. They were surgical strikes designed to remove me from the equation before the final phase of whatever plan Megan and Kyle had been building for 3 years. Derek pulled out more documents. Financial records. Bank statements. Transfer confirmations. The $9,000 that disappeared from Connor's account, he said. It went to an offshore account registered to a shell company in the Cayman Islands. The same shell company that received payments from 3 other men in 3 different states over the past 7 years. All of them were engaged or married to women who matched Megan's description. All of them were financially devastated within 2 years of the relationship ending. She's done this before. Multiple times. She finds men who are stable and successful, builds a relationship, gets engaged, and then systematically strips them of everything they have before disappearing. Connor would have had no idea what hit him until it was too late. I stared at the documents, feeling a strange mixture of vindication and horror. I'd been right about Megan, but being right didn't make me feel better. It just made me more terrified for my brother. There's something else, Derek said. He pulled out one more photograph, this one showing Megan at a real estate office. She's been looking at properties in Costa Rica, specifically properties that don't have extradition treaties with the United States. I think she's planning to run. When? Hard to say. But if I had to guess, I'd say she's waiting for one more big score. Probably whatever's left in your brother's accounts, plus whatever she can access once they're married. She's going to marry him, take everything, and disappear before he even realizes what happened. We have to stop her, I said. We have to tell Connor. Derek shook his head. If you go to your brother with this, he's not going to believe you. As far as he's concerned, you're the villain. Megan has spent months poisoning him against you. Anything you say will just look like a desperate attempt to continue sabotaging his relationship. Then what do? We don't tell Connor. We show him. I hired a lawyer named Patricia Dumont who specialized in fraud cases. She was sharp and no nonsense, with a reputation for taking down white-collar criminals and scammers who thought they were too smart to get caught. I showed her everything Derek had found, and she spent 2 days reviewing the evidence and building a case. This is solid, she said finally. Not enough for criminal charges yet, but enough to get a civil investigation started. More importantly, it's enough to make your family listen. The question is how we present it. We need to confront Megan in front of your family, I said. We need to show them everything at once so she can't spin it or explain it away. Patricia nodded. I agree, but we need to do it carefully. If we spook her, she might run before we can expose her. And if she runs, your brother loses any chance of getting his money back. What do you suggest? We set a trap. We create a situation where Megan thinks she's in control, where she feels safe enough to let her guard down. And then we expose her in front of everyone. I spent the next week planning. Derek continued his surveillance, tracking Megan's movements and documenting her meetings with Kyle Brennan. Patricia coordinated with law enforcement, getting the fraud division interested in Megan's case and laying the groundwork for an eventual arrest. I reached out to the other victims Derek had identified, men who'd been too ashamed to report what happened to them, men who were willing to provide statements once they learned they weren't alone. Everything came together on a Saturday afternoon, 3 weeks later. Connor and Megan had planned an engagement party at my parents' house, a celebration of their upcoming wedding that I obviously hadn't been invited to. But I showed up anyway. I parked down the street and waited until I could see that most of the guests had arrived. Then I walked up to the front door with Derek and Patricia behind me, carrying boxes of evidence and recording equipment. My mother opened the door, and her face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Shock, anger, disgust, fear, and finally, something that might have been hope, like maybe some small part of her was glad to see me despite everything. Nathan, she said, you can't be here. Yes, I can. I stepped past her into the house, and you're going to want to hear what I have to say. The living room fell silent when I walked in. 50 people staring at me like I'd just walked into a funeral and started dancing. Connor was standing near the fireplace with Megan beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. His face went red when he saw me. Get out, he said. I told you I never wanted to see you again. I know what you told me. But before you throw me out, you need to see something. I turned to Derek. Show them. Derek set up a laptop on the coffee table and began pulling up documents, photographs, bank records, news articles from Oregon, evidence that Megan Collins was actually Vanessa Graham, a serial romance scammer with a string of victims across 3 states. The room was silent as he explained each piece of evidence. Megan tried to interject several times, but Patricia stopped her. You'll have your chance to respond, she said. But first, you're going to listen. Connor's face had gone from red to white. He kept shaking his head like he could make the truth disappear if he just refused to believe it hard enough. Megan stood beside him with her mask finally slipping. I could see the calculation in her eyes as she tried to figure out how to spin this, how to turn it around and make herself the victim again. Then Derek played the recording. We'd gotten it 2 days earlier, from a surveillance device planted in Kyle Brennan's car. It was Megan's voice, clear and unmistakable, talking to her partner about the con. Connor's almost tapped out, she was saying. Another month, maybe 2, and I'll have everything. Then we disappear. What about his family? Kyle asked. His brother's been sniffing around. I handled the brother. By the time I was done with him, his own family thinks he's a monster. He's not going to be a problem anymore. What if he figures it out? He won't. Men like Connor never figure it out. They're too desperate to believe someone actually loves them. By the time he realizes what happened, we'll be on a beach in Costa Rica counting his money. The recording ended. The silence in the room was deafening. Megan's face had gone completely white. All her careful composure, all her practiced vulnerability, had crumbled away to reveal something cold and ugly underneath. Connor turned to look at her. His eyes were wet, his hands trembling at his sides. Is it true? He asked, and his voice cracked on the question. Tell me it's not true. Megan opened her mouth and I watched her try to summon the tears, the denial, the wounded innocence that had worked so well for so long. But she couldn't do it. The evidence was too overwhelming, the recording too damning. She had no moves left. Connor, she started. Is it true? He shouted. The whole room flinched. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The silence said everything. Connor made a sound I'd never heard before. Something between a sob and a scream. My mother rushed toward him, wrapping her arms around him like she could protect him from the truth that had just shattered his entire world. My father stood frozen, staring at Megan with an expression of pure horror. Megan moved toward the door. Patricia stepped in front of her. I wouldn't recommend running, she said calmly. Detective Simmons from the fraud division is parked outside. She has questions about the 3 men in Oregon, the 2 in Nevada, and the 1 in Montana. Running will only make things worse for you. Megan's face twisted. She looked at me with pure hatred. You think you've won? She spat. You think this changes anything? Your family spent months believing the worst about you. They threw you away like garbage because I told them to. That doesn't go away just because you figured out the truth. I looked at her, at the monster behind the mask. You're right, I said. It doesn't go away. But you're going to prison. And Connor's going to get his money back. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life knowing that I saved my brother from you. That's enough for me. Detective Lisa Simmons entered the house with 2 uniformed officers. She was in her late 40s with sharp eyes and the confident manner of someone who'd been doing this job for a long time. Vanessa Graham, she said, you're under arrest for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Megan didn't struggle as they handcuffed her. She just stared at me with those cold eyes, promising revenge she'd never be able to deliver. Kyle Brennan was arrested an hour later at a hotel across town. He tried to run but didn't get far. The aftermath was chaos. My family stood around in shocked silence, trying to process what they'd just learned. The engagement party guests filtered out slowly, whispering among themselves about the drama they'd just witnessed. I found Connor sitting alone in the backyard, staring at nothing. I sat down next to him without saying anything. I'm sorry, he said finally. His voice was hoarse. I'm so sorry, Nathan. I believed her. I believed everything she said about you. You didn't know. I should have known. He turned to look at me with red-rimmed eyes. You're my brother. I've known you my entire life. I should have trusted you. She was good at what she did. I put my hand on his shoulder. She fooled everyone. That's not your fault. How did you know? How did you figure it out? I didn't, at first. I just knew I was innocent. I knew the texts were fake, and the money transfer was fake, and the letter was fake. So I started digging. And once I started finding things, I couldn't stop. He was quiet for a long moment. Thank you, he said finally, for not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you. My parents came out to the backyard a few minutes later. My mother was crying, ugly sobbing in a way I'd never seen before. She threw her arms around me and held on like she was afraid I'd disappear if she let go. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. We should have believed you. We should have listened. I held her and let her cry. My father stood nearby with his hands in his pockets and his eyes on the ground. He wasn't crying, but I could see the shame written all over his face. The regret for every word he'd said, every accusation he'd made, every moment he'd chosen a stranger over his own son. I don't expect you to forgive us, he said quietly. What we did was unforgivable. I could have argued. I could have let them suffer in their guilt, made them grovel and apologize and prove their remorse over years of trying to earn back my trust. But I was tired. Tired of the anger, tired of the hurt, tired of carrying the weight of what Megan had done to my family. So instead, I just said what was true. I forgive you. My father's head snapped up. His eyes were wet now, tears he'd been holding back finally breaking free. Just like that? Just like that. Because you're my family, and family doesn't give up on each other. We stood there in the backyard as the sun set, the 4 of us trying to figure out how to rebuild what had been broken. It wasn't going to be easy. Trust takes time to repair, and scars don't disappear just because the wound has healed. The legal proceedings took almost a year. Megan, whose real name was Vanessa Graham, was charged with multiple counts of fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy across 4 states. Her trial made regional news, and victim after victim came forward to testify about how she'd destroyed their lives. She was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Kyle Brennan got 8. Connor got most of his money back through a civil suit. Not all of it, but enough to start over. He didn't date anyone for a long time after that. He said he needed to learn how to trust himself again before he could trust anyone else. My relationship with my family slowly healed. There were awkward dinners and difficult conversations and moments when old wounds reopened unexpectedly. But we worked through them. We learned how to talk to each other again, how to listen, how to believe. A year after Megan's arrest, I got a letter in the mail from the prison where she was serving her sentence. I almost threw it away without reading it. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The letter was short. Just 2 sentences. You ruined my life. I smiled and put the letter through the shredder. Then I called my brother and asked if he wanted to grab dinner. He said yes, and that was enough. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.